he couldn't be objective as an experimenter because he was in the investigation. So it'd be very hard for him to be objective. I'm just thinking there's something else you could bring in here about a lack of objectivity. So in 2018, and I hope your teacher has told you this, but in 2018 they found some hidden tapes where they found the research assistants telling the guards how to behave, telling them they had to be strong and they'd find it in themselves to be, tell off the prisoners. And one of the guards went, well, I'm not very tough. And he went, well, you've got to find it in yourself to be tough. Now, call me old-fashioned, but when the research assistant tells you how to behave in an experiment, I'd say that's called investigative bias, and it's not very objective. Normally, investigative bias is like subtle clues or cues, and they could be unconsciously done. But this was very manipulative. It was the assistant saying, you must be tough, because we're relying on that. So you could bring in that as a lack of objectivity. Oh, hello. Someone on a bike. Oh, you're very brave, mate. So the classic